So this PowerPoint is on defining cognition, which can be found in Chapter 7 of the textbook. I really like this phrase, this quote. It says, cognitive processes surely exist, so it can hardly be unscientific to study them. We know that thought, which cognition is thought, we know that that exists, so it's important that we study that. So what is cognition? Let's define that first a little bit. Cognition is thinking, simply thinking, and it encompasses the processes associated with perception, knowledge, problem solving, judgment, language, and memory. So those things are all components of simply thinking. The senses serve as the interface between the mind and the external environment, receiving stimuli and translating it into nervous impulses that are transmitted to the brain. The brain then processes this information and uses the relevant pieces to create thoughts, which can then be expressed through language or stored in memory. The brain does not gather information from external environments only. When thoughts are formed, the mind synthesizes information from emotions and memories. Emotion and memory are powerful influences on both our thoughts and behaviors. And that makes complete sense that our emotion and memory would powerfully influence how we think and how we behave. So as we've seen in other slides regarding psychology, it's important to note that our emotion and thoughts and behaviors are all connected, and that's a huge part of psychology, the connection between all those things. So let's look at a diagram from the textbook. We see that in this process, first, our sensations, or five senses, pick up information. We also have the emotions and memories in our brain, and then the information and sensations produce thoughts, which is related back to emotions and memories, and that produces a behavior. So essentially, our emotions, our memories, our thoughts are all connected to how we behave. We take in information, it's involved in thoughts, emotions, and memories, and that produces a behavior. Let's define the word concept. Concept is a mental grouping of similar things, events, and people that is used to remember and understand what things are, what they mean, and what categories or groups they belong to. For example, if I say to you, think of a car, the concept car will evoke some ideas in your head about what a car is and what types of characteristics it contains. For example, does your concept of a car have black tires, 2 doors, 4 doors? Is it red, white, black? Could be any number of things. A prototype is the best example or representation of a concept. So the first car you owned is likely your best example of the concept of a car. And that's a prototype. That's the example that you have in your brain to represent that concept. So let's go a little bit further with concepts and look at natural versus artificial concepts. A natural concept is a mental representation of events or objects drawn from personal experience. Because of this ability to create a mental representation, kind of like a mental blueprint, we are able to perform previously learned tasks like tying our shoes without needing instructions each time. Obviously, you don't need instructions each time to tie your shoes. It's just a natural concept that comes about. Natural concepts are often described as being automatic and second nature. We understand them and how to do them based on our self-knowledge and previous experience and observations. So another example besides like tying your shoes would be if like riding a bike. We initially had to learn it, but then it's just innate or second nature, as the quote says. An artificial concept is a mental representation or category that is created by humans rather than being directly observed in the natural world. These concepts are formed through the process of abstraction, where common features of objects or experiences are identified and generalized into a new conceptual entity. So let's look at an example of that. An object with three sides is called a triangle. This concept was created by humans. A natural concept would be, for example, direct experience observing a mountain, which we know that's you directly see a mountain, and that is a looks like a triangle, but the artificial concept would be defining that mountain as a triangle. That's human created to define that as a triangle. Let's define schema. A schema is a knowledge structure that allows organisms to interpret and understand the world around them. Schemata is a method of organizing information that allows the brain to work more efficiently. And let's look at an example of that, a cognitive schema. Again, a cognitive schema is a cognitive framework that organizes information about the world around us. It's a packet of information in our brain that categorizes objects and concepts into groups. Our brain naturally likes to group things based on common features. It makes it easier on your brain to group things together. Our brain likes to organize things. Having a schema in our mind makes it easier for us to identify new objects and try to define them based on our existing knowledge. For example, you might see a raspberry and know it's a berry due to its similarities to strawberries and mulberries. Here you're using your berry schema. Knowing what a raspberry is and having that grouped together allows you, to group things together more easily because you know its similarities. An object schema would be learning the difference between a car and a bus. Role schema would be learned gender roles. Event schema would be able to differentiate between seasons, differentiate between fall, summer, winter. A self schema would be learning about personal aptitudes, and a person schema would be learning about other people's personalities, roles, and preferences. You're able to differentiate between those. And that's pretty much it for cognition. As usual, please let me know if you have any questions, and thank you for listening.